if you're listening to this, it means I'm not hallucinating. I really made it back, at least for now. He told me I had 24 hours, maybe less. I want to let you know my experience and warn you in case I don't make it back a second time. I don't know who you are or how you stumbled upon this, but you need to listen. I'm not supposed to be here. I shouldn't be anywhere. I died. I remember the impact, the twisting metal, the silence that followed. But I never moved on. Something found me in that in-between place. It gave me a choice. I don't know if I made the right one. Maybe I did. Maybe I doomed myself. All I know is I'm still here, and I have a job to do. This is my story. I don't remember much about the crash, but apparently I died. I was having an out-of-body experience, floating next to the wreckage, watching my lifeless body. Before I could register what was happening, someone appeared in front of me. He was tall, well-dressed, and somewhat skinny, with red skin, black hair, and horns curling from his head. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. What are you?" The figure smiled, an effortless, almost amused expression. "Me? I'm a collector, investor, and an innovator. And I can tell you and I are going to be good friends," he added with a sinister smile. There was something about the way he spoke, calm, measured, too confident, that made my stomach twist. I gasped. Are you the devil? Am I going to hell?" His golden eyes gleamed with something unreadable. "Not quite, my friend." His voice was warm, almost inviting. "I am the archdemon Mephistopheles, and I am here to help you." Help me? Yeah, right. A demon appearing at the exact moment of my death offering help? No, this was a trick. This is where it all fell apart. Hell, damnation, eternal suffering? I swallowed hard. "Help me how? You want my soul?" Mephisto chuckled, stepping closer, just enough for me to see the faint glow of embers swirling in his pupils. We demons get a bad rep, you know. But, well, some of it is true. I can grant wishes. I can bring you back to life so you can live happily ever after with your wife and daughter. It was too good to be true. My mind screamed trap. But there was something in his voice. It felt convincing and comforting, like I was talking to an old friend. Was he hypnotizing me? Was my response even mine? Or was my fate already determined? Why would you do that? Why help me? His smile deepened, but his eyes never changed. Well, you have something I want. And I am a sucker for a good deal. A deal? For what, my soul? My undying loyalty? Oh, no, nothing so dramatic. I like to be fair with my trades. All I need from you is to collect a handful of souls for me. 16, to be exact. The air felt heavier. What? You want me to kill for you? No way, forget it. Crawl back to whatever hellspawn you came from. Mephisto didn't react. If anything, his expression softened, like he was indulging a child throwing a tantrum. Let's not call it killing. Think of it as collecting. And besides, he added, feigning a look of concern, I would never ask you to harm an innocent soul. What kind of monster do you think I am? Then who? All I need is for you to clean up a dungeon full of creatures and bring me their souls. You'd be a hero, really, ridding the world of pests, he replied, obviously pleased with himself. My pulse pounded in my ears. I'm no fighter. I don't know how to slay creatures. I can't, I replied, my voice barely a whisper. Ah, but you won't be alone. I'll grant you a small fraction of my power to get you started. It'll be like we're fighting together. You know, teamwork. And the dungeon? It's full of weapons and items. Just look for the shiny ones. I hesitated. He was making it sound easy. Too easy. And after that? His eyes gleamed. After that, you're free to go. I'll bring you back to life and your daughter will have her daddy again. My throat tightened. Jessica. My baby girl. She was going to be 7 next week. My wife, my love, my perfect life. Everything I fought so hard to build, and right when I had it, ripped away in an instant. I had done everything right. I worked hard, built a home, stayed out of trouble. And yet here I was, staring at my own corpse while this thing stood there, offering me a way out to get back what I lost. My hands clenched into fists. And will I ever have to see you again? Mephisto's grin widened, smooth as silk. Only if you want to. He extended a hand. So, do we have a deal? I stared at him, at the wreckage, and my own lifeless body. It wasn't fair. I deserved another chance. Anger engulfed my thoughts, and with a determined voice I said, Okay, get me my life back, before shaking his hand and stealing my fate. Mephisto smiled, his sharp teeth glinting. Good choice. I don't remember closing my eyes. One moment I was shaking his hand, and the next, I was here. I was standing in a hallway. It stretched endlessly in both directions, dimly lit by an eerie reddish-orange glow that seemed to seep from the very walls. The air was thick, like I was breathing through syrup, and it reeked of sulfur and decay. The stench of the dungeon clung to my throat and made me want to puke. My limbs aching, my mind foggy, I fell onto my knees. The floor was cold and dusty. I felt bugs start to crawl up my legs. I was about to pass out. This was it. What was I thinking making a deal with a hellspawn? Then I felt it. For a second, something pulsed inside me. An unnatural heat crawled through my skin, seeping into my veins, into my bones. It was Mephisto's power. It felt good. It felt amazing. My senses sharpened. The air no longer strangled me. The filth, the stench, the crawling insects? They were nothing now. But already I felt it fading. The power was bleeding away, slow but steady. I had to move, fast. I turned, expecting to see Mephisto standing there, watching, waiting. But I was alone. The only thing that greeted me was the glint of metal. A pile of weapons, armor, trinkets scattered across the floor like discarded relics from forgotten battles. I crouched, running my fingers through the rubble. Most were broken, rusted, shattered, useless. I tossed aside splintered bows and dull daggers until my hand closed around something I could barely see, could barely feel. A long blade. It was dulled and chipped, but whole. I exhaled sharply. This was it? This scrap of metal was supposed to save my life? Frustration bubbled up. This? My voice echoed down the endless corridor. This is the best I get? Then, something inside me shifted. A piece of that demonic power tore from my body and sank into the sword. The metal shuddered. The rust peeled away. Before my eyes, the dull edge sharpened itself, the chips and cracks knitting together as if time was reversing. When the transformation stopped, the blade was as good as new, back to its former glory. Suddenly, my body felt heavier, weaker. The air felt denser. I had given up some of the demonic energy keeping me together to restore the sword. But looking at it now, feeling the weight in my hands, I finally had a chance. My joy, however, was short-lived. Just as my blade got restored, I heard a faint skittering, slow, deliberate. I froze. My fingers clenched around the hilt of the blade as I turned my head just enough to catch movement in the shadows. Our eyes met. It was huge, a spider-like creature as tall as me while standing on its 8 legs. Its fur was a deep, sickly purple, and its blood-red eyes gleamed with hunger. Etched into its back was a pentagram, burned into its flesh like some kind of cursed mark. It took a step closer, then another. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my own feet. It kept advancing. I had to think of something quick. Its body was massive, but its legs were rather thin, brittle. I could cripple it. If I could just cut off its mobility, I had a chance. I crept forward, careful not to make a sound, gripping my sword tightly. I swung the sword with everything I had. Crack! One of its legs snapped clean off. The creature let out a piercing screech, its body convulsing in rage. I barely had time to react before it lunged. I threw myself back, just dodging its fangs, but my leg caught on something. Its web. Sticky strands coiled around my ankle, tightening like a noose. I tried to yank free, but before I could, the creature was already on top of me. I swung once more but missed. Its leg slammed into my thigh, pinning me down, and searing pain tore through my body as one of its fangs pierced my calf. The venom burned as it entered my bloodstream. I screamed. Desperation took over. I gripped the sword tight and thrust it deep into the spider's body. The creature let out a horrific screech and recoiled, tearing its fangs from my leg in the process. My muscles snapped like rubber bands. The web ripped apart, but so did my leg. A chunk of my own flesh dangled from its fangs. I didn't wait. I forced myself up and ran. Each step was agony. The pain was unimaginable. Bones grinding together, blood gushing down my ankle. But I didn't stop. I found a crack in the wall, barely wide enough to squeeze into. I threw myself inside and collapsed, panting, trembling. The spider thrashed outside. It scraped against the stone, but it couldn't reach me. I was safe. But the pain was too much. I couldn't take it anymore. I went into shock and fainted. I woke up to silence. I searched for scars but found none. My leg was all healed up. No torn muscle, no exposed flesh. Just smooth, unscarred skin. Yet something was wrong. Again, the air felt heavier, my limbs weaker. The demonic power inside me, the one keeping me alive, had faded even more. My time here was running out. I had to act fast. I grabbed my blade and crawled out of my hiding place, heart pounding, my body still aching. The dungeon was different now. No longer just one endless corridor. No, now there were turns. Rooms, paths, twisting tunnels. I moved carefully, scanning every shadow, every flicker of movement. I needed to find something. Something smaller, something weaker. Something I could actually kill. You can imagine the excitement I felt when I finally saw it. A rat-like creature, barely larger than a dog, and it hadn't noticed me yet. I crept closer, preparing to attack. That's when I felt it. A sharp, cutting pain on my right side. Unbeknownst to me, as I was stalking my prey, something else was stalking me. I turned slowly and saw a group of 3 skeletons. Silent, expressionless, and armed. I tried to defend myself, but it was no use. They had stabbed me in my liver, and my body went into shock. I could barely move my arms. They swung again, piercing my gut, and a third time piercing my chest. I fell back, the room turning dark. I was bleeding out. In the distance, I heard a roar, and it was coming closer. My vision gave out. Everything went dark, but I was still conscious, barely. I heard screams and a tussle. I heard bones breaking. Were they mine or of the skeletons? I don't know. That's as far as I remember before fainting again. I don't know how long I was out, but when I opened my eyes, all I saw was black. Absolute, suffocating darkness. I could hear drops of liquid dripping somewhere in the distance. Slowly, the air was dry, carrying a pungent stench of decay, yet it didn't have the same crushing weight as before. My body felt good, healed at least to an extent, enough to move. The demonic power Mephisto had given me was almost non-existent now, just a faint ember in the pit of my soul. And yet somehow I was still around and kicking, still breathing, still alive. I was sitting on something that creaked beneath my weight. A rocking chair? I pulled myself up, only to immediately step onto something soft and damp. My foot sank slightly into it before I pulled back, my pulse quickening. I pressed forward, feeling my way through the pitch-black void. The space was vast. I couldn't find any walls. As I navigated blindly, my fingers brushed against broken fragments of wood. A shattered table? A chair? I couldn't tell. There were more of them scattered all around. Then my hand found something else. Was that skin? I yanked my arm back instinctively, expecting to be attacked. But nothing happened. The thing didn't move. Heart pounding, I forced myself to reach out again. My fingers ran over smooth, ice-cold skin. I felt a body, but there was no head. Whatever this thing was, it was long dead. Where the hell was I? I needed to find a way out, fast. But as I took another step, my foot caught on something and I collapsed forward. A sharp clattering sound echoed throughout the space as I landed on something solid, something hard. I knew that sound. Warily, I reached down and traced the shape with my hands. Skulls, jaws, long, brittle bones, piles of them. A cold shudder ran down my spine. Was I in the skeleton's lair? The same creatures that had nearly killed me before? No, this was different. These weren't animated soldiers. These were just remains. Leftovers. Leftovers from something much worse. Before I could react, something grabbed me. Something big. A massive arm wrapped around my torso, lifting me effortlessly off the ground. I gasped as a deep, raspy voice murmured, "You're hurt, dear. You need your medicine." The voice was wrong, distorted. It was a mix between the voice of a woman and a growl of a beast. I was carried through the darkness, cradled in a grip far too strong for me to break. My body was still weak. My blade was gone. I had no way to fight back. I was at the mercy of this thing. She set me down gently. I was back on that rocking chair. Then something flickered in her hand. A dull red glow. It wasn't bright, but it was enough for me to finally see my captor. She was massive, easily 7, maybe 8 feet tall. Long, black, unkempt hair hung over her face. Her limbs were unnaturally long and meaty, her fingers ending in black, jagged nails. She was wearing an old white gown riddled with holes. But really, it was her face that made my stomach twist. The skin didn't fit. It sagged, loose and drooping, as if it had melted away and barely clung to the bone underneath. The excess flesh hung over one eye entirely, while the other barely peeped through the folds. She tilted her head slightly, the motion making the skin shift and stretch in unnatural ways. Then she smiled. Her teeth were crooked, uneven, like shards of broken glass forced into a grin. "That's enough for now, dear. Soon, You should feel much better," she whispered. The amulet in her hand stopped glowing. Utter darkness surrounded us once more. I heard her footsteps retreating, fading into the void and leaving me by myself. And yet, she was right. I was feeling better. The pain was dulling, strength returning to my limbs. Whatever that amulet was, it was healing me. This pattern continued for what felt like an eternity. I would try to find an exit, but before I could even reach a wall, she would find me. Every time, she would patiently drag me back to that old rocking chair and say, "You're hurt, dear. Come back. The outside is dangerous, my child. Stay where it's safe." She never acted hostile, never raised her voice, never struck me. But her sheer size and imposing presence, it was enough. Enough to keep me trapped. She treated me like I was her child. She would try to feed me, offering chunks of creatures she hunted in the dungeon, but I could never stomach them. So, she kept me alive with the amulet instead. Just enough to stay conscious. Just enough to keep me moving. Never enough to fight back. I tried communicating with her a couple times, although my tries didn't yield much success. Once, I told her I was feeling weak and needed more energy from the amulet. Her response, though, was rather disturbing. "No, dear. Too much of a good thing is bad. It will turn you bad. It will turn you rotten." Her voice was soft, almost mourning. "Rotten and evil like the others. The ones before." The ones before? Were they the skeletons? The corpses I found? She shook her head slowly. "The amulet. The demon. He turned them bad. Made them sick. Evil. I had to put them down. My children, my poor children." I swallowed hard. "Are you talking about Mephisto?" I asked cautiously. That was a mistake. Her entire body stiffened. Her fingers twitched, nails scraping against the floor. Her head jerked up unnaturally like a puppet being yanked by its strings. "Evil." Her voice dropped into a harsh whisper. "Evil demon, liar, deceiver. Don't trust him. Don't trust him, my child." For the first time, there was something sharp in her tone. Something dangerous. But just as quickly as it came, it faded away. She slumped, murmuring an apology before leaving me alone again. I was surviving. But this wasn't living. She hated Mephisto, that much was clear. But I needed to collect souls. I needed to escape. Time was slipping away from me, and I needed to get back to my family. My real family. I don't know how long I had been trapped. The darkness, the isolation, it was starting to get to me. But there was one thing I noticed. Every time she left to hunt, I would hear it. A faint, distant sound. The shifting of bricks. It was subtle. The sound of dripping liquid also made it difficult to hear. But with enough practice and concentration, I got the hang of it. I didn't have enough time to find the exit, but I could run to the bone pile and back. Bit by bit, I moved bones from the pile closer to me, sharpening them against each other in secret. I couldn't hold on to them. She would see and take them away. But I kept them nearby, within reach. She wanted me to call her mother, so that's what I started doing. I had to play along. I pretended to love her. I let her believe I was different from the others. But then, one day, I got careless. I'd finally finished sharpening my weapons. I guess I was too excited as I didn't hear her approach this time. Out of nowhere, her massive hand gripped my wrist, lifting one of my makeshift spears. Sharp and dangerous, my child. Her voice was calm, yet sharp. What are you doing with these? My heart pounded, my body went cold. I had to think, and I had to think fast. They're a gift, Mother, I said quickly, forcing warmth into my voice. For you, so you can hunt those evil monsters easier. Silence. Then she let out a deep, pleased hum. Oh, child, you are not like the rest, are you? She patted my head almost affectionately. But Mother is strong. She doesn't need these brittle bones. And with that, she crushed every single one of my weapons with her bare hands. I was devastated. All that work, all that time, gone. What now? Then things got worse. One day, as I sat in my rocking chair, she returned from her hunt. But she wasn't alone. With her was another body. She sat it down next to me, her loose, sagging face pulling into something that resembled a smile. You have been such a good boy, dear. So I brought you a friend. What should we name him? The person she had brought was no more than a corpse, freshly killed, judging by heat that surrounded the body and the smell of it. Perhaps she tried to save it, just like she did with me, but wasn't as lucky. She tried to revive him with the amulet, but it was too late. He was gone. Nevertheless, that didn't stop her from acting like he was alive. She leaned close, her breath hot against my ear. Dear, I said, what should we name him? A cold sweat broke out down my spine. Ray sounds like a good name, Mother, I said with a shaky voice. Her jagged teeth gleamed in the dim light of the amulet. Ah, wonderful child. Let's name him Ray. I hope you two get along. And then she left. I was barely holding it together. I was trapped, barely alive, going insane from the darkness and isolation. And now I had to talk to a corpse as my companion. But then I noticed something. Tucked beneath Ray's stiff, cold fingers was a dagger. She must have overlooked it. It wasn't strong enough, not yet, to really give it strength. I needed to infuse it with Mephisto's demonic power, the way I did with my first weapon. But the only way to obtain more demonic power was through the amulet. I had to get it somehow. I started planning. I got the dagger, buried it deep below the moist ground next to my rocking chair, and moved Ray further back. I broke the legs of his rocking chair so that even a small push would make him fall. And then I waited. When the mother came for our usual dose of the amulet, I threw a small rock at the other rocking chair, and Ray fell over. Mother! Ray fell! He's hurt! I'll hold on to the amulet, you check on him! You can trust me, Mother! In an instant, she rushed to his side, leaving the amulet in my hands. This was my chance. I dug out the dagger and clutched the amulet tight, letting its power surge through me, and for the first time in a while, I felt Mephisto's power fusing with my own again. It felt good. It felt amazing. I felt just like I did when I first entered the dungeon. It wasn't as subtle as I hoped, though. The dim glow turned into a blinding crimson light. The entire room lit up. For the first time, I saw everything clearly. The mother turned around. In an instant, she lunged at me, screaming, "No, child, don't! It will corrupt you! It will make you undesirable!" She smacked the amulet from my hands. The light didn't fade, though. It was too late. The amulet was already activated. I had already gotten its power and imbued it with the dagger, so I lunged forward, slashing her in the torso. I could see I hurt her, but this one slash wasn't nearly enough to finish her off. I trusted you, child. You betrayed me, just like the others. Now you are sick, wicked. But it's okay. Mother will put you down. She lunged. Her claws slashed across my side, sending me flying across the room. Blood filled my mouth and some was dripping from my back and side. I had never imagined she was this powerful. As soon as I got up on my feet, she was already up on my face, her drooping skin even more unsettling on the eerie glow of the amulet. I managed to dodge her attack just in the nick of time and slashed at her ankles. She screamed in pain and lashed out, her sharp talon-like nails slicing clean through my right arm, severing both flesh and bone. Before I could react, she hurled me across the room again. The impact shattered what little remained of my unbroken bones. The pain was unbearable. My arm was gone, and my dagger with it. My body was broken. I was done. And she was coming closer. Then I saw it. One of my bone spears. She must have kept it. It was just within arm's reach. With the last of my strength, I grabbed onto it, channeling what little demonic energy remained in me, pouring nearly all of it into the weapon. If I had any chance of piercing her skin, this had to be it. But as the energy drained from my body and into the spear, the pain intensified, threatening to pull me into unconsciousness. Then the mother lunged. I forced myself into position. At the last second, I drove the spear into her heart. She crumbled beside me. From her body, a blue flame emerged. Her soul, perhaps? It drifted toward me, then sank into my chest. A wave of relief washed over me, dulling the agony, if only for a moment. I had collected my first soul. As I laid there, staring at the crooked ceiling bathed in the dim red glow of the amulet, I blinked and was met with a blinding white light. I felt warmth on my skin and felt hot, small pebbles beneath me. The air felt fresh and filled my lungs with vitality. I heard sirens and chatter. Where was I? As my eyes adjusted to the light, I realized it was the sun. I was back on Earth, or at least it seemed like it. I turned my head and I was next to some cheap motel. The people didn't seem to notice me though. I turned right. My arm was back and my wounds were gone. I was back to full health, or as close as I'll ever get, I guess. I heard slow clapping from behind and a chuckle. I turned around and there he was. Oh, bravo, bravo. I knew you could do it, said Mephisto, standing there with a wide smile. I was too disoriented from everything that had happened. I couldn't gather my thoughts to talk, to ask a question. Mephisto took a slow look around. Isn't it nice here? Is this Earth? I asked, expecting to be pulled back into the horrors of the dungeon. Well, of course, he said, tilting his head slightly. I figured you deserved a little reward after all that. Wouldn't you agree? A strange mix of emotions welled inside me. Relief, exhaustion, suspicion. I did it. I killed her. I got the soul, I said with a shaky voice. Indeed. Your first taste of victory. But let's not get ahead of ourselves now. You still have 15 more souls to collect. The people around us kept moving, carrying on with their everyday lives, oblivious to our conversation. The people around us, can they see us? I asked, barely keeping it together. Oh, of course not. I wanted a little privacy between us. You have about 24 hours here, give or take. After that, duty calls. So make the most of it, will ya? He said, tilting his head to one side and giving me a wink. After that, he was gone. Not in a blink, not in a swirl of shadows. He was simply no longer there. Like he had never existed at all. At that moment, I heard a voice in the distance calling me. Sir, are you all right? Do you need help? I turned. A motel employee stood nearby, concern etched on his face. For a moment I hesitated. Then, without saying a word, I followed him inside. The rest of the staff greeted me. Despite me not saying a word to them, they welcomed me and gave me a room to stay in. Probably thought I was homeless or something. They were kind people. I guess that was the reason Mephisto brought me here. His idea of giving me a break. I still didn't know where I was exactly. I was too tired to ask. In my room, I found a laptop. The same one I'm using to type and voice this message out. And next to the laptop was this old book with beautiful engravings on it. Its pages were empty, though, and next to it was a sticky note that read, "A little something to get you going. You got this." With an M at the bottom, one end of the letter curling into a devil's tail. I didn't know what to make of it, so I opted for the laptop. I arrived at the motel around 11 a.m. yesterday. It's currently 10:30 a.m. I don't have much time left. I hope I manage to remember all the important stuff. Whoever is listening to this message is a warning. Don't trust Mephisto. Death is a better fate than the one that awaits those who are foolish enough to make a deal with him. "11 a.m. That's the time he said I'd be pulled back. I've been watching the digital clock on the motel nightstand like it was counting down to an execution. The neon red numbers were all I could see, burned into my eyes every time I blinked. I hadn't left the room since I got here, not even once. Every time I tried, Mephisto's voice would come haunting from the depths telling me I'm not allowed to leave. That this vacation of mine is cemented for the time being to just this motel room. The bed was stiff. The sheets smelled like someone else's sweat. I didn't care. After what I went through, it felt like a 5-star suite. I didn't sleep, couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. The way her skin drooped and shifted. The way she whispered to me like I was her child. The way she screamed when I drove a spear through her chest. Mother. She was dead now. 1 down, 15 to go. I'd spent most of the last 23 hours staring at the ceiling, trying not to lose it. There was a Bible in the drawer. I didn't open it. There was a pen next to the laptop. I didn't write anything else. I just waited. And when the clock blinked 10:59, I stood up, faced the window, and watched the dust in the sunlight like it was the last beautiful thing I'd ever see. 11 o'clock. The lights flickered. Once. Twice. And then the room folded in on itself. I didn't feel a lurch or a pull. Just a snap. One blink and the world changed. Now I was on my knees, face pressed into rough, dusty velvet. The air was heavy with the scent of grease paint, mildew, and something faintly metallic. Blood, maybe? Or rust? I couldn't tell the difference anymore. I pushed myself up. Around me, costume racks, torn tutus, tattered tuxedos, masks with porcelain smiles. A long, tilted mirror stretched across the wall behind a cluttered makeup table. All the bulbs were dead except for one, sputtering weak light like it was struggling to breathe. I was backstage. Somewhere, just beyond the curtain, I could hear it. Music. Twinkling piano keys, repeating the same 3-note phrase again and again. It was warped. Like the melody was melting. I turned, and of course he was there. Mephisto. Leaning against a dressing room door like he owned the place, which honestly he probably did. His suit today was a deep plum color, sleek and flawless, not a wrinkle in sight. His red skin looked freshly polished, and his black horns gleamed under the spotlight flickering above. He held a wine glass filled with something thick and black that didn't move when he tilted it.
"Ah, Backstage,"
he said, swirling his drink.
"Love the smell of desperation and rotting ambition. Reminds me of Los Angeles."
I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. He could feel the hatred burning behind my eyes. He grinned like it tasted sweet.
"Ah, you're hunting the star this time. Lucien Valaro, puppeteer, a real artiste. Very temperamental, demands full creative control."
He sipped, then made a face.
"He's a little unhinged, but aren't we all?"
A pause. Then he snapped his fingers. A mask dropped from somewhere above and landed in my hands. Half comedy, half tragedy. Just like the old theater cliches. I looked at it. It was made of something light, but it felt heavy. Like it was watching me.
"You'll want to follow the music,"
Mephisto said, stepping back toward the mirror. His reflection didn't move with him. It watched me directly, eyes gleaming gold.
"Try not to disappoint your adoring fans."
I opened my mouth to ask what kind of freak show I was walking into this time. But he was already gone. Not vanished, not smoked away. Just absent. Like he'd never existed. The only sign he'd been there at all was the faint scent of sulfur and cologne, and the echo of a soft chuckle drifting into the walls. I was alone again, and the curtain to my next nightmare was already rising. The music followed me no matter where I turned. It came in loops, 3 broken piano notes playing over and over again like a lullaby composed by someone who had never heard joy in their life. The notes were slightly off-tempo, like the melody was limping. There was no rhythm to hold on to, just the sickly repetition that pulsed through the cracked foundation of this ruined theater like a heartbeat grown tired of beating. Backstage was a labyrinth. The corridors twisted on themselves in ways that didn't make sense. Staircases that looped back to the same landing, doors that opened into themselves, mirrors that reflected rooms I hadn't yet entered. I passed by a wardrobe where the clothes hung in midair, the sleeves twitching like they were gasping for breath. Another hallway was lined with dressing room doors, each one slightly ajar, each leaking laughter so faint I couldn't tell if it was distant or just inside my skull. The walls here bled stories. Faded posters clung to crumbling plaster, showing old plays with names that never existed. The Swan Who Never Slept, The Man Who Swallowed Time, The Devil's Curtain Call. Each image featured the same man with hollow eyes and a smile too wide for his face. Lucien, I guessed. Always center stage. Always staring right at you. The temperature dropped the deeper I went. My breath started to fog, but it didn't rise like normal. It fell. It dropped to the floor like mist, curling around my boots as if trying to drag me down. The floorboards beneath me groaned with every step. But it wasn't just the sound of age or weight. No, it was like something alive was beneath the wood shifting with me, listening, waiting. I passed a full-length mirror leaning against the wall, unframed and filthy, the glass warped like it had melted in places. My reflection wasn't quite right. I was standing still, but the reflection tilted its head, blinked a half-second out of sync, then smiled at me. I didn't smile back. I kept walking. Eventually, I found what looked like a props storage room, its rusted metal door barely hanging on a single hinge. I pushed it open and was greeted by organized chaos. Shelves crammed with cracked violins, mannequin parts, false heads, wigs crawling with moths, swords made of plastic and steel, clubs, ribbons, stilts, batons, gas lamps, porcelain hands. I sifted through them, trying not to look too long at anything that blinked. Most of it was broken, unusable, but tucked between a stack of carnival masks and an old megaphone was something that didn't belong here. A conductor's baton, wrapped in black velvet, too pristine for this dust-choked room. It pulsed faintly in my hand when I touched it, warm, as if it remembered being alive. I gripped it tight and gave it a flick, more out of instinct than reason. The walls around me trembled. A low hum vibrated through the room, knocking a few props off the shelves. The baton emitted a pitch, not loud but sharp, directional like sonar. The noise bounced into the walls, echoed once, and then I heard movement. Something had heard it too. I turned and ran, slipping through a narrow passage behind a fallen backdrop curtain, the baton now tucked into my belt like it had always been there. That's when the laughter started. Not from the walls this time, but from behind me. It was high-pitched and erratic, like a child's toy gone haywire. It stuttered between giggles and sharp, guttural cackles that made my skin crawl. I didn't look back. I knew that whatever it was, it didn't want to be seen until it chose to be seen. The corridor led into a room of hanging wires, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, extending from the ceiling like spiderwebs made of piano wire. Some reached the floor, others dangled midair, spinning slightly as if something had just passed through. I stepped between them carefully, holding my breath, eyes scanning for trip lines or glints of tension. My boot touched a raised floorboard and the wires sang, a vibrating whine that echoed like a violin's death scream. And that's when I saw him. Not Lucien. Me. Across the wires, standing behind a tattered stage curtain, was a figure with my face, my body. But wrong. The eyes were too wide, pupils pinpricks in a sea of yellow. The jaw hung slack, unhinged like a broken doll's. The movements were jerky, unnatural, like every limb was being pulled by invisible threads. It cocked its head at me, then raised a hand in a slow, deliberate wave. It was my mirror, but not a reflection. A puppet of me. Its mouth opened, far too wide, and it began to laugh. The same distorted laugh from before. It echoed through the wires, and they vibrated violently, slicing through the space between us as if reacting to its joy. I backed away. I was no longer backstage. I was in his theater now, and the show was just getting started. The puppet me didn't walk. It staggered. Its limbs twitched in unnatural angles, moving just a beat too late after each step, like someone was trying to remember how a human should move and getting it almost right. Its eyes locked on mine, wide, glassy, unblinking. The skin was too smooth, too pale. Its mouth twitched open, and in a warped version of my voice it whispered, "You're not real. I am." And then it charged. I dove to the side just as it leapt, the wires above us whipping and singing in the sudden rush of air. The thing moved fast, faster than I thought possible for something so broken. It hit the floor and twisted around mid-slide, launching itself at me with an awkward grace, limbs snapping forward like they were being pulled by someone above the stage, which they were. I rolled behind a column, heart hammering in my chest. I'd fought monsters, beasts, skeletons, a grotesque mockery of a mother. But this was me. Same build, same face, same scars. Even the small one under my jaw that I got when I was 13 trying to climb a rusted fence. Lucien hadn't just copied me. He'd studied me, rebuilt me, perfected me in his eyes. I hated it, and I couldn't look away. The puppet circled me, limbs dangling one moment, then snapping upright as the marionette strings had been yanked. It giggled, a high mechanical stutter that echoed around the hall. "One soul down, 15 more to go. Wonder what our wife will look like as a doll." That did it. I surged forward, swinging the conductor's baton like a blade. As it cut through the air, it let out a pulse, a high-pitched shriek of sound that staggered the puppet for just a second. Just enough. I followed with a punch, my knuckles cracking against its jaw. It didn't bleed. Its head snapped sideways on impact, but then it rotated fully around, twisting backward with a horrible crack. Its smile never broke. Then it mimicked my punch perfectly, swinging with mirrored speed and precision. The blow landed square in my ribs, knocking the breath out of me. It was learning, copying. I stumbled back, dodging another strike, then ducked under a kick that would have shattered my jaw. I lashed out with the baton again, this time striking its arm. The sound pulse burst through it, and I saw the wires now. Thin, nearly invisible threads embedded in its joints, leading up into the darkness above. They sparkled faintly with each blow. I had a target. I lunged again, this time not for the body, but the strings. I spun low and swept the baton across the air like a scythe. The sonic burst sliced clean through two of the strings. The puppet shrieked, faltering, its right arm falling limp. It looked at the arm, then back at me, and it screamed. The sound was awful, shrill, layered, like a chorus of my own voice all screaming in different tones. The lights in the room flickered violently, and I felt the floor shift, like the whole stage was breathing. The puppet's body convulsed, limbs jerking erratically, dragging itself toward me like a broken machine determined to finish its task. I backed up. I didn't want to kill it, and that was the worst part. Somewhere in the back of my mind I kept thinking, what if this thing remembers being me? What if there's something in there that knows who I am? But then I remembered the way it said Jessica's name, the way it smiled when it did. I gritted my teeth and raised the baton one last time. This time I funneled what was left of Mephisto's power into it. I felt it burn through my arm, seeping into the wood, coiling into the air around me. The baton pulsed a bright red and let out a roar. Not a tone, not a hum, but an explosion of sound that cracked the walls around us. It hit the puppet dead center. The strings snapped, one by one, curling and sizzling as they burned. It collapsed mid-charge, crumpling like a discarded toy. Its limbs twisted as it fell, and for a second, just a second, it looked peaceful, still smiling. I stood over it, breathing hard, chest heaving. My ribs throbbed, my arm ached. The demonic power was gone again, flickering inside me like a dying light bulb. I stared at the thing, and myself, and I hated how empty I felt. It was wood. Just wood, fabric, and wire, that's all it was. But it looked too much like me, and for a few moments, it moved better than I ever had. I looked down at it. The puppet was dead, but its strings weren't. They twitched on the ground, still sparkling faintly like they were reluctant to die. The ends curled unnaturally, slow and deliberate, like snakes deciding whether I was predator or prey. I knelt, cautiously reaching out. The moment my fingers touched them, I felt it. A pulse. Faint, but there. Not demonic power exactly, but close enough. The threads weren't made of silk or steel. They were memory, pain, ego, the raw essence of control. And they still had juice left. I unwound them from the corpse and wrapped them around the conductor's baton. It crackled in my hand, lightning snapping down the shaft as the weapon drank the strings. The baton darkened, hardened, its polished wood turning to something bone-white and rigid, like sculpted ivory. The tip shimmered faintly as if waiting to be used. I could feel it now. Lucien's grip on this place, and I could use it against him. The backstage corridor opened into the main theater, if you could call it that. The seating was endless. Rows of rotting chairs filled with mannequins dressed like nobles, kings, lovers, soldiers, all posed mid-clap, mid-gasp, mid-laughter. And in the center of it all, the stage. Red curtains hung like bleeding wounds, fluttering without wind. Spotlights clicked on as I stepped forward one by one, casting me in a sharp white light. The music swelled. Then the curtains drew back. And there he was, Lucien Volaro. He hovered above the stage, surrounded by dozens of glowing strings attached to his limbs, his shoulders, skull, even the corners of his jaw. His body was skeletal, wrapped in tattered finery. An old tuxedo fused into his rotting flesh, gold trim stitched into the muscle. His face was a mask of wax and bone, stretched into a grin too wide for any human mouth. He moved like a dream unraveling.
"Ah, the understudy arrives,"
he purred, his voice reverberating through the rafters like it came through a cracked phonograph.
"You missed your cue."
"I'm here now," I said, stepping onto the stage, weapon in hand. "I heard your lead actor fell apart mid-performance." He tittered, spinning in the air, strings twisting around him like a cocoon.
"Ah, that little imitation of you. Cute. You moved like a toddler learning ballet."
The lights dimmed. The mannequin started clapping. He'd rigged the audience, too.
"Now then, shall we begin the final act?"
Lucien said, arms outstretched. The lights went black. Then a spotlight snapped on, centered on me. Lucien dropped to the stage like a marionette on a slack line. His feet didn't touch the ground. He hovered inches above it, swaying gently, the strings keeping him upright. From the sides of the stage, puppets began to shuffle in. Dozens of them. Some wore masks. Some had real human faces stitched to wood. Some dragged swords. Others held torches, musical instruments, props. One was holding what looked like a child's teddy bear, except it had a jaw. I didn't wait. I surged forward and swung the baton. It screamed. The strings around it glowed brighter, reacting to Lucien's energy. The nearest puppet exploded in a spray of splinters and teeth. I moved fast, cutting through two more, ducking under a whip made of piano wire, vaulting over a collapsing stage trapdoor. Lucien clapped, slowly and mocking.
"So much rage. You're performing like a beast. This is a tragedy, darling, not a horror,"
Lucien said, his voice echoing from all directions. I turned, breath heaving, and shouted back, "You call this a tragedy? I've seen better writing on public bathroom walls." The mannequins gasped in unison. Lucien froze, then tilted his head like a confused owl.
"What?"
I kept going. This whole thing, overproduced, confused tone, weak third act. Honestly, if I weren't stuck here, I'd be asleep by now. The strings above him trembled. Lucien's eyes widened. The control was slipping. He was unraveling.
"You dare mock the great Lucien Volaro?"
I cut in, mimicking his pompous tone. "You're not a playwright. You're a parasite with a spotlight fetish." The mannequin started to laugh. Lucien's body convulsed midair. The strings began snapping, one by one, unraveling like the seams of a forgotten costume.
"No, the audience, they love me."
"They're made of wood, Lucien," I yelled, charging forward. "Just like you." I leapt, baton raised high. It pulsed with every ounce of energy I had left. Lucien tried to pull back, but his own strings tangled, tripping him mid-flight. He hit the floor with a graceless thud, half twisted, arms flailing as his puppets turned to ash around us. I brought the baton down hard, piercing his chest. It sank through his ribcage like the stage was paper. He screamed. But this time it wasn't theatrical. It was real. The stage lights flickered, then burst. The mannequins stopped moving. Lucien's body began to dissolve into confetti, black, crumbling ash that shimmered like stardust. and from it, a blue flame rose. It hovered in front of me, flickering once, twice, and then surged forward straight into my chest. I gasped. For a moment I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. My heart stuttered, my eyes blurred. I was falling. And then I was back. Flat on my back, warmth on my face, the smell of dust and old linens in the air. The motel ceiling above me. The red numbers on the clock read 11:01 a.m. My lungs weren't ready for the atmosphere shift, from ash and sulfur to dust and dry motel sunlight. My body was intact, clean, whole, no blood, no wounds. And then I heard it, slow, mocking and familiar. 2 for 2, came a voice behind me. I should start taking bets on you. I turned. Mephisto stood there, dressed in something even more ridiculous than before. A blood-red tuxedo jacket with gold trim and a bow tie that looked like it had teeth. His horns were shorter now, or longer, or curling in the opposite direction. I couldn't tell. He didn't stay consistent unless he wanted to. Lucien was always a diva, he said, casually inspecting his nails. Glad to see someone finally gave him the review he deserved. I didn't respond. Not right away. I was still breathing hard, trying to shake the stage lights from my retinas. The weight of the baton? No, not the baton anymore, the weapon. It still lingered in my hand, even though it was gone now. He noticed the silence and grinned wider. A little winded? Don't worry, my little superstar. You've earned your break. He held up 2 fingers, then tapped his wrist like he was pointing at a watch that wasn't there. 24 hours, give or take. Then the curtain rises again. I slowly nodded. What's next? He looked up, pretending to think, tapped his chin and smiled with all of his teeth. Let's just say the next one's got a bit of flair. Might even give old Lucien a run for his money. He leaned in slightly, voice dropping into something smooth, stickier. I wouldn't worry too much. You'll know them when you see them. That smile didn't fade. It just hung there, too wide, too still, like it had been painted on. And hey, he added, tilting his head, if you start hearing music again, don't follow it the next time. I blinked, and just like before, he was gone. No smoke, no flash, no trace. Just silence. And the clock ticking down to whatever fresh hell came next. "11 a.m. Funny how I can't remember what day it is anymore, but I remember that number down to the second. I'd barely slept. Again. The bed was the same lumpy slab. The motel walls were still yellow with smoke and time. The Bible in the drawer hadn't moved. I hadn't opened it. Wasn't sure I wanted to know what it said about guys like me anyway. If you're joining me for the first time, this is the 3rd installment of The Devil Has Me Collect Souls for Him. I'm afraid this song and dance is becoming all too familiar with me in my life. I'd taken the mirror off the wall, turned it to face the corner. After collecting Lucien's soul, I didn't trust reflections anymore. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the cheap clock on the nightstand. 10:59. Ticked forward to 11, and right on cue, the lights flickered. Then I smelled it. Brimstone and smugness. Knock, knock, Mephisto said, as he strolled into the room like he owned it. Careful, I might start charging rent. He leaned against the doorframe, perfectly balanced in a crimson jacket with a white clerical collar poking out underneath. He was swinging a golden rosary around his fingers like a set of car keys. Look at ya, he continued, stepping further inside. Still alive, still breathing, and hey, not bad, soul boy. I didn't say anything. Didn't feel like playing along today. Aw, don't get mopey on me now. You gutted a stage legend last time. You're a rising star. Hell's got buzz, you know. He wandered over to the window and peeked out through the blinds like he was checking on the weather. Anyway, time for the next curtain call. He turned toward me again, and something in his grin flickered. Just for a moment. His eyes shimmered gold, oily and bright. This one, he said, his voice dripping into something smoother and lower. Likes to think he's holy. He looked me over, the grin crawling right back into place. And since you're overdue for confession, I figured why not send you somewhere with stained glass and screaming souls? I stood and cracked my neck. My muscles still ached from the last fight. It felt like I'd run a marathon while getting stabbed, which honestly wasn't far off. You sending me to another dungeon? I asked. No. This time... He smiled wider, baring sharp teeth that weren't there a second ago. This one's a little more structured. Think incense, rituals, lots of blood, theatrics. You'll feel right at home. He held out a hand like he was offering to waltz. Ready to be born again? I didn't take it. I didn't have to. The moment I blinked, the room folded inward. The scent of mildew and detergent peeled away, replaced by something ancient and burning. And then hell swallowed me whole. When I opened my eyes, the sky above me wasn't red or black. It was nothing. Just void. A smear of non-color that didn't move or swim or glow. It simply existed in the way rot exists in bone. The ground beneath me was not stone or sand, but some pulsing, muscular surface, almost organic, with pores that wept clear fluid and twitched under my weight as if trying to reject me. Hell. Not the dungeon I was in before. Not a cave or a prison or a twisted opera house. Hell proper. And I wasn't in a chamber or a hallway. I was in a labyrinth of pain. I couldn't tell where the path started or ended. The terrain shifted with every dozen steps. Walls that bled, floors that whispered, ceilings that reached down with tendrils of smoke shaped like fingers. Time didn't move here. Or maybe it did, just in a wrong way. I couldn't tell if hours passed or seconds. All I knew was that I was lost. And I was alone. No sole target, no direction, no clue. Just one primal fact beating in my skull. Survive. The first hallway I stumbled into had no door. No warning. Just sound. Screaming. The walls were a smooth black stone, veined with glowing cracks like dried lava, but I realized after a few steps that the veins weren't cracks. They were actual veins, actual wet, pulsing vessels. And the walls themselves weren't stone at all, but faces. Thousands of them. Mouths open in eternal wails, their tongues nailed to the wall, stretched like parchment strips, and twitching with every failed attempt to scream. Eyes rolled endlessly in their sockets. Skin peeled, reformed, and peeled again. and they weren't just trapped, they were aware of every second. Some of them saw me. Their gazes locked onto mine as I walked past, and I could feel their hatred, their hunger, their hope. As if they believed I might stop, yank out the nails, and give them relief. I didn't. I couldn't. I kept walking, faster now, boots slapping against the floor, slick with what I hoped was water. At the end of that hallway, the air got colder, then sharper. Every breath started to sting. I emerged into what looked like an empty courtyard made of glass, only it wasn't smooth. The floor was a shattered mosaic of mirror shards, jagged and filthy, crusted in black ichor and bits of flesh, and across it, dozens, maybe hundreds of naked souls crawled like insects. They were bleeding from everywhere. Palms, chests, faces, knees. Every inch of skin sliced and torn from crawling across the razor ground. And yet they moved, slowly, in agony and wailing. I didn't step in. One of them looked up at me, face covered in gashes, eyes lidless and dry. He opened his mouth, and something like dust poured out. Then, wordlessly, he went back to crawling. The glass glinted under the bloody twilight. I could see glimpses of my reflection in every shard, and in every one, I looked a little more like them. I turned and left that place as fast as I could. But hell doesn't let you escape. It just changes the scenery. The next room wasn't a room, but instead it was a maw. I didn't realize I'd entered it until I was already inside. The walls were flesh, wet, twitching muscle that groaned when I touched it. The floor was a soft, sticky mass and flexed like a tongue. Parts of the ceiling were teeth. Not decorative, not metaphorical. Actual gnashing teeth. Massive rows of them grinding against each other with a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. The air smelled like bile and copper. My stomach turned and I nearly retched. In the center of the maw was a pit. A vertical shaft of slick muscle and wet cartilage. And hanging inside were souls. Dozens of them, suspended by tendons wrapped around their torsos. Their arms flailing just above the tooth-lined walls. And those walls bit slowly, closing inward one row at a time, crushing each soul with each turn of the unseen mechanism. I heard one scream only once before being split in half like wet wood. Blood sprayed upward in an arc and never hit the ground. The mouth drank it. I took a step back, then another, and the walls quivered and I knew I wasn't alone anymore. Someone had seen me. Not one of the souls, but the room itself. It knew that I didn't belong. I turned and ran. I didn't care where, I didn't care what was next. I just ran, my boots sticking with every step, the floor pulling at me like it didn't want to let me go. The hallway beyond the mouth narrowed into a passage of ribs, arched like a cathedral ceiling, each one made of bone the size of telephone poles. The space between the ribs flickered with firelight, but there were no torches, just open flames rising from mouths in the walls, whispering things I couldn't understand. One of them called my name, but I didn't stop. I couldn't trust anything here. The maze went on. More screams, more blood. A bridge made of spines, a tunnel that pulsed with a heartbeat. A room where every sound I made became a scream in someone else's throat. I kept going. My energy was almost gone. Mephisto's gift flickering out like a dying candle. I hadn't eaten in what felt like days. My stomach was clawing at itself and my vision blurred. I dropped to my knees in a long corridor lined with hanging chains. Above me, the ceiling opened into a blood sky I hadn't seen before. And there, in the distance, through the haze and the heat waves, I saw it. A spire. Black stone, red windows, a steeple of rusted iron shaped like a cross. A church. It looked like salvation, even though I knew better. Even in hell, some part of you still wants to believe the light means something. I stood and I walked towards it. I fled blindly, the screams of the half-chewed echoing behind me like a hymn of damnation. And for what felt like hours, I didn't think, didn't breathe, didn't even exist. I just moved, letting my legs carry me across the ever-warping terrain, through corridors that bled from their ceilings, past windows showing visions of my past mistakes refracted through flames, and over bridges made from stitched-together femurs that cracked underfoot like brittle branches. Every breath I took felt heavier than the last, as if hell itself was pressing in around my lungs, wrapping invisible fingers around my ribs, squeezing gently but with intent. Somewhere between the corridors of bone and sinew, I heard it. Music. Not like Lucien's Madden piano, not like anything beautiful. This was deeper, slower. A chorus, rising from beneath the very floor I walked on, vibrating through marrow and muscle and filth. I followed it, not by choice, but because I didn't know what else to do. My boots slick with something black and syrupy, my skin itching under the damp air that seemed to stick to me like sweat made from oil. The hallway opened suddenly into a vast chamber with no roof, only sky, or what passed for sky in this place. A swirling mass of fire and teeth and sorrow, watching in silence. The room itself was wide, almost circular, lined with hooded figures standing on raised platforms that curved along the walls like choir stalls in a cathedral. Their robes were sewn from patches of flesh, scripture etched into every fold, glowing dimly with an inner heat that made the symbols writhe like worms translucent beneath skin. None of the demons moved, yet all of them sang. But the song wasn't music. It was agony transcribed, a melody made of screams bent into notes, harmonies woven from the cries of sinners flayed open and left to rot beneath the altar of some ancient unspeaking god. As their voices poured over me in waves, my skin began to itch, then crack, then blister, not from heat, not from flame, but from whatever sound came from this unholy singing. It was exposing nerves from me that hadn't existed seconds before. I fell to my knees, my ears bleeding, teeth clenched so tightly I thought they might snap, and around me I saw bodies, human and some not, dancing. Not willingly. Their limbs flailed in rhythm to the song, torsos jerking like puppets tied to invisible strings. And as they spun, their skin burned away, revealing charred muscle and twitching organs still trying to flee their cages. They danced until they collapsed. Then they danced again. I crawled out of there, howling silently, unable to hear my own voice over the choir's infernal hymn. And then came the wheel. It towered over me like some mechanical god of old, half embedded in a cliffside of cracked stone vein with glowing magma. A wheel of punishment. Massive and slow-turning, with arms made from barbed wire rotating ceaselessly, dragging behind it a trail of smoke and sobbing. Chained to it were sinners, or what remained of them, limbs broken and reset, bones twisted in unnatural angles, eyes gouged out but still wet with tears. As the wheel turned, the chains would snap tight, wrenching torsos in directions the body was never meant to bend, cracking pelvises like crab shells, snapping knees inward, resetting them the wrong way, and then again and again. And those who fell off were not free. They crawled back to the base of the wheel and begged to be chained again, mouths foaming, tongues swollen, whispering prayers I didn't understand. One man reached toward me as I passed, a hand bloody and raw. "Join us. The pain is pure here. It's all that's left," he croaked, his voice like rust scraping across metal. I said nothing. I didn't have the strength. I kept walking. Through it all, time blurred like melting wax. A hunger gnawed on my insides, not as pain anymore, but as a cold emptiness that felt almost philosophical. Like my very existence was growing thin around the edges. My arms felt heavier, my feet dragging through a mire that didn't exist, the air thick with spiritual rot. I looked down once and realized I'd been bleeding from a gash in my thigh I didn't remember getting. I had all kinds of wounds on me now after that demonic choir. The demonic power Mephisto had given me after Lucian's fight was almost entirely burned out, like an ember trying to survive in the wind. He didn't give me a recharge, and I don't know why. Which wasn't entirely a bad thing. I mean, with the more demonic power that I got from him, the less human I felt. Hell, I barely feel human every time I set foot in this wretched pit of despair and sin. My skin was cracked in places, my fingers numb, and every time I blinked, I saw images of my family. Not happy memories, what I'd left behind, and what I might become if I failed. Jessica's face warped into porcelain, when my wife's mouth was sewn shut. Again, I kept walking. I don't know how long it took, or if it was a trick or mercy, or the beginning of something worse. But eventually I saw it. At the end of a long slope lined with crucified souls, backs arched, mouths open in an eternal scream, there rose a structure unlike the rest of this rotting hellscape. A massive church. Its spire was crooked, leaning toward the sky like a man trying to stand despite a shattered spine. Its stones were black but shimmered like obsidian, veins of red pulsing gently along its walls, giving off a soft, unnatural glow that pulsed in time with some heartbeat buried deep within. Stained glass windows glowed, but not with light. They pulsed like living things, flickering faintly, casting beams of red and gold and sickly green onto the ground in twisted mockeries of saints and martyrs. Above the door, a crucifix hung, made not of wood, but of fused bone and rusted blades. The fire hanging from it twitching ever so slightly, eyes blinking slowly in a skull that was still halfway alive. The gates were open, and something inside was waiting. I took one more step forward, toward the place that should have felt sacred, toward the church that reeked of blood and forgiveness. I knew that this was the soul Mephisto had promised that I would have to take. I could feel it inside me. The church loomed ahead like a wound on the landscape. The air grew hotter the closer I got, thick with the coppery scent of blood and something sweeter. Incense or rot, I couldn't tell. The screams had thinned, replaced by a low, sustained moan that vibrated the bones beneath my skin. They were hanging, crucified outside the church walls, bodies twisted in mockery of redemption, Dozens of them, male, female, though it was hard to tell beneath the layers of decay. Their arms were nailed out in grotesque parodies of grace. Flesh stretched too far, some split open to reveal tendons like violin strings. Heads drooped, but not dead. Not all of them. One raised his face to me, swollen and blackened, limbs twitching. Flies blanketed the bodies in thick clouds, crawling over open wounds, sipping blood like holy wine. Ash rained softly, endlessly, sticking to their damp skin and open eyes. Some twitched, some wept. None begged. The doors of the church opened with no sound, just a slow, reverent swing inward, as if the building itself was welcoming me. Inside, the air shifted, cooler, still thick but reverent, sacred. The kind of sacred that makes your skin crawl. Along the walls of the church were tapestries. They were sewn flesh, stretched taut and backlit by flickering red light. Saints with flayed faces, martyrs mid-scream, their suffering immortalized in gristle. When I stared at them too long, the images changed. One saint opened its stitched mouth. Another turned its head slowly toward me. The floor was black stone etched with a spiral of symbols. Some holy, some blasphemous. Most both. Every footstep echoed like a confession. Every breath felt like it might be my last. Then I saw it. At the far end of the cathedral, behind a pulpit carved from bone and nailed together scripture, hung a crucifix. A man, if it was still a man, hung from it, impaled with 6 massive nails. "I see you've come to seek grace." The voice didn't boom. It whispered, deep and smooth, like the warmth of a sermon whispered too close to the ear. I turned slowly, instinct already telling me I'd found the soul I was meant to collect. He stood just beside the altar, massive and still, his hood casting his face in shadow. His robe was the color of dried blood, stitched at the sleeves with thread made from something disturbingly pale. His hands were enormous, thick and weathered, fingers stained red as if dipped in centuries of sin. "Welcome, traveler. This is the house of cleansing. A place where the soul may be scrubbed of its blackness and prepared for salvation." I didn't speak at first. My throat was dry, and my instincts were screaming that this was no preacher, no priest. This was something worse. I'm looking for someone," I said finally. "You found him. I am Brother Malik, shepherd of the forsaken, butcher of the impure. I prepare the wicked for their final grace," the figure said, folding his hands across his waist. Butcher. I cut my face straight, grip loose. "I'm not looking to convert," I said slowly. Malric chuckled, a warm, amused sound that made the hairs on my arm stand up. "Oh, you misunderstand. There is no conversion here, no judgment, only acceptance and repentance. You need not believe in salvation, you need only submit to it." He stepped closer. I tensed, but he stopped at the edge of the pulpit, tilting his head like a curious teacher. "You're a man burdened by guilt. It drips off of you like oil. Your soul is swollen with rot.
but it's not too late. Not yet.
I'm not here for salvation. I'm here for
confession.
Of course, he interrupted gently.
All who wander into this place begin with denial. It is the first step.
His hand gestured to a nearby pew. The wood looked like petrified bone. I didn't sit. I'm not here to be saved.
No, he said, his tone suddenly heavier. You are here to be cleansed.
He stepped down from the pulpit now, slow and solemn, towering over me. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to.
You carry sin in your marrow. It pulses in your blood. And whether you understand it or not, you came here to beg, to crawl, to suffer, and to be made clean.
My mouth was dry. I took a step back. He didn't follow. I'm not interested in your rituals. I'm just passing through.
There is no passing through hell. Only those who are burned and those who are consumed.
I was sent by someone. A higher authority, I lied.
Ah.
Malric smiled behind the hood. I could feel it.
The liar emerges. A false prophet, then, sent to deceive me, to test me. It's always the same.
I'm not a prophet.
No, you're a patient.
He raised one massive hand and pointed to the far corner of the cathedral. I hadn't noticed it before. A basin, carved from blackened stone, filled with something thick and rippling. It smoked slightly. Above it, a dozen nailed figures hung upside down, their faces contorted in silent screams, tears streaming from their eyes into the basin below.
Yes, you wish to walk out of here with strength. I will grant it. I am not without mercy. Drink. Cleanse yourself. And then we will begin the ritual.
What ritual?
The one that saves your soul.
I didn't move. He waited.
Drink. Face yourself or perish as you are.
Something in me gave in. I mean, I didn't have a weapon, and I was beaten and battered to hell on my journey here. I approached the basin. The liquid inside looked like ink, but thicker. Dark red and black twisted together in lazy coils. It smelled like blood, like sweat, like dying. I dipped my fingers into it. It burned, but not my skin. My memory. Suddenly, I was there again, in the driver's seat, headlights swinging wild, the bottle clinking on the floor, the sound of screaming metal and the thud of impact, a man's body tumbling over the hood, the sound of my wife crying in the hospital waiting room. I gasped and stumbled back, but I hadn't even taken a sip. Behind me, Malric's voice echoed gently.
Drink, sinner. Let it in.
I leaned down, took one gulp. The pain was immediate. Images slammed into me like nails through the skull. Lying in the meeting room, throwing someone under the bus, watching them escorted out, knowing I should have been the one fired. Weeks later, reading about his eviction, his kid hospitalized, the GoFundMe someone sent me still unread in my inbox. Another sip. My brother. The fight, the betrayal. The words I said, words meant to destroy. Meant to hurt. I collapsed beside the basin, vomiting bile, shaking uncontrollably. Tears streamed down my face. Not because of guilt, not even grief. Just pain. I felt the pain that all of my sins caused everyone else in life. It hurt to feel it all again, and hell didn't let you forget anything. But my limbs were getting stronger, my skin tightened. My thigh no longer throbbed, my hearing cleared, and the ringing was gone. The drink and the pain had healed me. I stood slowly. Malik watched in silence. "I've done what you asked." "No, you've prepared." Then he lifted a massive blood-stained bell from beside the pulpit and rang it once. The sound echoed like thunder, and from the shadows, hooded zealots emerged, dozens of them, silent and waiting. "You will not leave this place. Not yet." And then they seized me. They didn't speak. Not when they grabbed me. Not when they dragged me through the blood-streaked nave. Their robes were stitched shut across their mouths, bound with wire. I struggled at first, screamed threats, promises, curses, but none of them flinched. They moved in perfect unison, like a single thought with 100 hands. The pit waited behind the altar, sealed by a stone slab painted with something like rust. They pulled it back, and a stench rose so strong it felt like it pressed fingers down my throat. Sulfur, rot, and meat. Something growled below, deep and low and hungry. Malik stood over me, holding a rusted censer in one hand, the other raised like a benediction. "You have confessed. Now you must bleed. Only through pain will your cleansing be complete." I tried to fight, even then, but I was still dizzy from the font. My body healed, yes, but wrung out like a towel soaked in sin. The zealots lifted me like a doll and threw me into the dark. I hit the stone hard and rolled twice. Something cracked in my shoulder. I groaned and pushed myself up. It was pitch black. The only light came from above, a perfect square of red glowing light faintly behind the altar. Then it closed. The stone slab scraped back into place, sealing me in. And then the growl again. It wasn't human. Nothing about it was. It came from the far corner, low, phlegmy, and predatory. Claws scraped against the stone. Then a sniff. Then silence. I backed away slowly, keeping my steps light and deliberate until my heel caught something. Bone, and lots of it. I knelt quickly and felt through the pile. Rib cages, femurs, shattered teeth. Then my hand closed around something solid. A shield. Small, indented, but real. Still attached to a skeletal arm, I yanked it free. Beside it, buried under more remains, was a short sword. Rusted but whole. A blackened hilt wrapped in wire. The blade was chipped and slightly bent, but sharp. The growl turned into a bark. A heavy snort of breath. And then I saw it. 2 white eyes glowing faintly in the dark. A set of fangs gleaming like wet glass. The hellhound stepped into the light. Skeletal but swollen. Black tendons pulsing between its ribs, its jaw too long for its skull. It charged. I raised the shield just as it collided with me, the impact nearly knocking me flat. Its claws tore into the metal, peeling it back like paper. I slammed the hilt of the sword into its snout once, twice, and rolled free before it could bite. It lunged again. I ducked, slashed upward, and tore through the membrane beneath its jaw. Black blood sprayed, hissing on the stone like acid. It yelped but didn't back off. We circled each other, My legs shook. My shield arm was going numb. But I wasn't gonna die here. I wasn't gonna give up. It charged again, jaw open, going for the throat. I waited, then stepped aside and plunged the sword through its side, driving it between the ribs until it hit the spine. The hound screamed, a hollow, vibrating sound, and fell. It twitched once, then stopped. I stood over it, panting. Blood ran down my arm, but I didn't care. That's when I heard the scrape. Another slab sliding open. A new figure dropped down, heavy and thicker. Not animal, but a demon. It stood 8 feet tall, all sinew and veins, its flesh peeling in ribbons that floated as it walked. Its mouth hung open, ringed in teeth that moved independently like sea anemone. Its arms were lined with bone hooks, clinking softly as it moved. It looked at me like a teacher might look at a misbehaving child. I raised my sword. This fight was different. No room to dodge. The demon came in swinging, a hook fist whistling past my ear. I blocked the second with my shield and felt something snap in my arm. The impact hurled me across the chamber straight into the pile of bones. I screamed, rolled, and blood filled my mouth. The demon followed, slow and methodical. No rush. It had done this 1,000 times. I stood barely and circled left. It reached for me. I ducked and slashed at its knee. It stumbled just enough. I lunged for the exposed gut and drove the sword in deep, twisting as it roared. It clawed me across the back. I felt my skin tear, but I kept twisting that sword. The demon slammed its elbow into my temple. Blackness. But just for a moment, I came to gasping on my knees. The demon was bleeding, thick purple gouts spilling from its torso. It was limping now, and it was furious. I still had the sword. It charged. I dropped my shield and used both hands. At the last second, I sidestepped and brought the sword up, dragging the blade across its neck. A geyser of blood erupted. The demon staggered, clutching its throat, and fell. This time I didn't wait. I picked up the shield and drove its edge into the demon's skull until it stopped moving. I was bleeding, broken, but alive. I looked up. The stone slab opened with a hiss of blood-warmed air, and I climbed out of the pit on trembling arms, dragging my battered body up into the sanctuary once more. Every limb screamed. Every breath was a blade, but I was alive. And the bastard who put me here was still waiting. The church was silent now. The hooded zealots were gone. Only Malik remained, standing beneath the crucifix, hands folded like a priest before a wedding. He smiled gently when he saw me. You endured. You bled. You crawled through the mouth of hell itself and came back breathing. That's strength, child. I gripped my sword tighter. You threw me in a hole and tried to have me torn apart by monsters. And you survived, he said, taking a step down from the pulpit. Which means the ritual worked. You're ready now. For what? Your blade? Your sermon? One last bloodletting to round things out? Malik raised both arms in solid reverence. For salvation. I stepped forward, limping but unafraid. The sword in my hand felt heavier now. Malik wasn't just another monster. He was a man who had become one for the sake of a twisted ideal. I'm not confessing again, I said. You will, he replied, voice low and certain. Before the end, you will scream your sins. All of them. And when you do, I will be ready to receive them. He reached behind the altar and drew his weapon, a massive cleaver, black and chipped, etched with scripture. The blade buzzed faintly with energy, as if it fed on guilt. Let the cleansing
begin.
He moved with horrifying speed for a man so large, rushing down the aisle and swinging the cleaver like a man chopping firewood. I ducked under the first arc, rolled right, and slashed at his side. My blade scrapped his robe and bit into his flesh, but just barely. The man was thick with muscle and madness. He grunted, turned, and backhanded me across the face. I hit the floor hard, teeth clacking together. Blood pooled in my mouth and I staggered up. Malik was already closing in.
I can see into your heart. You made a deal with the devil. You took it without question. That is your true sin.
I blocked the blow with my shield, what was left of it, and the wood cracked. I retaliated with a quick jab to his side. He growled, stumbled, but didn't fall.
You lie to yourself. Pretend you're saving your family. You enjoy this. You love the killing, the blood, the fire, just like the rest.
I backed away, panting. He was too strong. I couldn't overpower him. But I had to outlast him, if anything. You want confessions? I shouted, circling him. Fine. You want sins? I'll give you some. He paused, cleaver held at the ready. I drove drunk once. It hit a guy. He lived, but barely. I didn't stop. I just kept going. My wife begged me to turn myself in, but I didn't. Malik's eyes narrowed. I lied at work. Lied to keep my job when I should have been the one fired. The guy they let go lost everything. I never said a word and never looked back. I stepped forward, sword raised. I got angry at my daughter. Yelled at her. Scared her. She cried all night. I told myself it was stress, that I didn't mean it, but I did. Malik moved like a judge passing sentence.
Good. Bleed it out.
He charged again. I dodged left, but not fast enough. His cleaver grazed my side, opening me up. Blood sprayed the tiles. I stumbled, dropped to one knee. Malik stood over me, raising the cleaver high.
Confess and be cleansed.
I smiled through bloody teeth. I already did, asshole. And then I lunged. He was standing there, still soaking in the confessions of my sins, when my blade caught him off guard, slashing across his throat in a perfect, desperate arc. There was a moment of stillness. Just one. Then blood poured from Malik's neck in a torrent. And not just blood, but voices. Thousands of them, screaming, moaning, praying. A river of sound. The souls he had consumed, released in a chorus of agony. Malik staggered back, clutching his throat. His cleaver dropped with a thud. He fell to his knees before the altar, eyes wide and unfocused. He tried to speak.
Glory in excelsis.
Then he collapsed. The sanctuary trembled. The massive crucifix above the altar cracked down the middle. The man nailed to it gave one final shuddering breath and then went still. Everything was silent. Then the blue flame rose from Malik's chest, curling upward like smoke. It hovered for a moment, then drifted toward me, slow and deliberate. When it touched my skin, it sank inside me. I stood there, bleeding, shaking, and empty. And then, like clockwork, I felt the air shift. The red haze brightened. The blood in the walls began to bubble. The walls groaned like they were exhaling, and Mephisto stepped through the church doors. The church had gone still. So still it felt like even the ash in the air forgot how to fall. Malik's body lay crumpled before the altar, his blood soaking the tiles in slow, deliberate, spreading halos. Mephisto's robes were different this time. A priest's cassock, long and black, dusted in ash and embroidered with dozens of laughing demon faces. A white stole hung over his shoulders, ends trimmed in gold, each side stitched with small crimson letters that read, "In sin, truth." He clapped once, slowly, then twice. "Well," he said, arms wide, "if that doesn't bring a tear to your eye and a heretic to his knees, I don't know what will." He stepped past Malric's corpse and walked to me. I put out my arm and he put out his. Malric's blue flame of a soul left my hand and entered Mephisto's. "Brother Malric," he said reverently, placing one hand over his chest. "You served with such passion, such drama. But you were a little much, even for hell. But oh, did you leave an impression?" Mephisto held Malric's blue soul in his hand. The flame resisted at first, quivered and shrank. But then it folded in on itself and stretched toward him like a ribbon of smoke. It wound around his wrist, up his forearm and across his chest. Mephisto's eyes rolled back briefly. His grin went still, and he breathed it in. The flame poured into his mouth like a reverse exhale. No theatrics, no fanfare, just one long, silent draw until the light disappeared entirely, and the room went dim. Mephisto closed his eyes and let the moment sit. Then he smacked his lips like he'd just finished a particularly good glass of wine. Pious and bitter. A little nutty on the end. Excellent vintage." He turned to me, arms open. "And you, my champion, 3 for 3. You're really starting to hit your stride. Took a couple of knocks on the way up, sure, but I'd say this one was your most spiritually fulfilling hunt yet." I didn't answer. I just stared. My sword hung loose in my grip. My whole body felt like it had been carved hollow and stitched back together. He tilted his head. "No appreciation for poetry? Ah, well, can't please every audience." He glanced at an invisible watch. "You've got another 24 hours. Earth time, of course, not hell time. God knows even I can't keep track of that." He reached out to me and touched me on the forehead. My wounds healed in an instant. He turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "All right. No sermon for the next one. Let's just say it's gonna be a bit more visceral. I'll give you the details later." And just like that, he was gone. No smoke, no flash, no fading shimmer. Just gone. And then the temperature dropped. For half a second, the blood on the floor froze solid. My breath fogged, my lungs locked up, and the ground split open beneath my feet. A column of fire, slick and writhing like it had veins, surged up from the stone and swallowed me whole. It didn't burn, it consumed, like falling through a throat lined with flame. My vision went red. I could feel myself unraveling at the edges. Consciousness stretched across dimensions like thread on a rack. And then I landed, hard, on something warm, rough, and real. Hot gravel scraped my elbows. My ears rang. When I opened my eyes, the sky above was blue, not crimson. Clouds drifted lazily past the midday sun. I was back. The motel. Same cracked sign overhead. Same flickering vacancy light buzzing like a dying insect. A wind passed through the empty lot, rustling a torn newspaper across the gravel. I lay there for a moment, blinking up at the sky. My body was whole, clothes intact. No sword, no blood. No cleaver-wielding zealot trying to baptize me in my own entrails. Just silence. Then a smooth voice, smug and entirely too close to my ear. "Tick-tock, champ. 24 hours. Rest up. You're gonna need it." A chill ran through me. The whisper was already fading. but the echo of it scraped along the back of my brain like a nail. I sat up slowly. Same motel, same parking lot. Same air that smelled like cigarettes and hot pavement. Only difference now? I had collected 3 souls into a deal that I still didn't understand. And the clock was ticking. "11 a.m. A motel room. Same cracked paint, same humming fridge. Same dust-mottled light cutting through the slats of the blinds. The only new addition was the faint smell of charred wood and... was that bacon? I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the laptop I'd just finished closing. Another soul, another confession typed up into the void. I hadn't slept. Didn't need to. Not anymore. Not when sleep was a luxury reserved for the truly dead. For the past hour, I'd waited for the inevitable knock, the impossible arrival. I didn't get one. Mephisto just popped up, sitting in the armchair, legs crossed, sipping from a mug that read, "Number 1 Dad," in chipped red lettering. "Ah, good, you're awake," he said, lifting the mug in a salute. "Would have been awkward to drag you out drooling and snoring. You mortals drool a lot. Did you know that?" I didn't answer. Not right away. His presence filled the room like smoke, warm, clinging, and impossible to ignore. "You always show up on time." "Of course I do," he said, mock-offended. "I'm nothing if not punctual. Well, that and devastatingly handsome, but that's just icing on the eternal cake." He leaned forward and gave a wide grin, teeth gleaming far too sharp in the morning light. The mug steamed in his hand, and the scent from it confirmed it wasn't coffee. Charcoal and old blood. "Ready for another vacation, champ?" I swallowed. "You said 16 souls. We've done 3. He clucked his tongue. "And this'll be number 4. We're making progress, sunshine." I eyed the corner of the room, where the sticky note still hung beside the leather-bound book with empty pages. The words scrawled on the note hadn't faded. "You got this. M." "You didn't say I'd be ripped apart, stitched back together, then dumped in hell with a parade of lunatics and monsters." Mephisto raised his eyebrows. "You're alive, aren't you? Mostly. You gave me power that fades. You send me in broken, starving, and alone." He looked over the rim of his mug and smiled with zero apology. "Aw, that's because I'm teaching you resilience. Or, just watching for fun. Depends on the day." I rubbed the scar on my side. The flesh there never felt right. Hot and numb, like a memory that wouldn't heal. "What's this next one?" That got his attention. He set the mug down on the motel dresser. The ceramic sizzled as it touched the cheap laminate. "You'll like this one. Very domestic. Very warm." I frowned. He watched me for a moment. Then his voice shifted just slightly. Still amused, still dancing at the edge of mockery, but now sharpened with something colder. "There's a soul in hell who thinks he's clever. Calls himself the Hearth Father. Built himself a little slice of paradise, right in the middle of my pit." He stood and walked to the blinds, pulling them back with one finger. Daylight flooded the room. Dust swirled in the beam like ash. "He finds the broken ones, the souls that fall through the cracks. Builds them houses, gives them names, smiles, roles to play, and then he brands them." Brands them? Claimed. In every sense. Body, soul, and purpose. He calls it family. I stayed quiet. Mephisto glanced back at me. They were mine. All souls in the pit belong somewhere. That's the point. He's rewriting contracts. He's stealing from you. Oh, he's doing more than that. He's domesticating them and turning eternal torment into bedtime stories. Barbecues, lawn chairs, and lemonade. It's revolting. He chuckled, shook his head, and tapped his temple. And he believes it. That's the best part. He's not lying to them, he's lying to himself. I felt the shift in the air, the way his eyes gleamed. Not just golden now, but molten. The anger was real, buried under charm and smirks, but very much present. What's his story? Oh, the usual. Wife, kids, house, mortgage, church on Sundays. One day he looks around and decides the world is too broken for his perfect little family. So he burns it all down. Says he freed them. Says he gave them peace. Hell has a funny way of granting you exactly what you want. He wanted a home that couldn't die, and he found a way to get it. He made himself a whole neighborhood of it, keeps souls on a leash and plays house while they scream under their smiles. I stood slowly. My legs ached more each time. Each return, something healed wrong. Or maybe it was just me unraveling. Mephisto turned smiling wide again. I want him gone. Burned, claimed, and corrected. Why not just do it yourself? Because I'm busy. And because, let's be honest, you're starting to enjoy this. I said nothing. He waved a hand. A flame burst into life in the motel bathroom mirror. No reflection, only fire licking the edges of reality. Front lawn. He's probably got a cold beer waiting for you. I stepped toward the mirror. The heat was real, hot enough to make sweat bead on my brow. But I'd walked through worse. I knew the fire wouldn't kill me. Not yet. Mephisto? Yeah, my boy. You said they scream under their smiles. He nodded. Are they still alive? His smile didn't change, but his eyes did. Ah, very. That's what makes it fun. Then he stepped back, raised his mug, and toasted me. To family. The flames roared and I walked through. When I emerged from the fire, I was standing in the middle of a cul-de-sac. A perfect circle of homes wrapped around me, identical in shape but melting like candles under a sky that bled orange and red. Asphalt oozed between cracks like lava veins. The smell hit me. Not brimstone or ash like before, but something worse. Burnt pork. The sun, if you could call it that, was stuck on the horizon, a swollen red blister pulsing with heat, too close and far too low. The air shimmered in waves. The houses stood proud with trimmed hedges and white picket fences scorched black. The lawns were perfectly manicured, though the grass twitched in the wind like flayed muscle. And it was quiet. No wailing, no gnashing. Just the soft hum of cicadas somewhere far away, and the occasional hiss of a sprinkler. Although they weren't spraying water, it looked like ash. Fine gray flakes wafted through the air, dusting the scorched hedges like powdered sugar. I brushed some from my sleeve, but it clung to my skin like guilt. A sound pulled my gaze to the left. a bicycle's bell. I turned just in time to see a little girl ride by on a melted pink tricycle, its plastic wheels warping into the road with every turn. She smiled at me. Her teeth were too straight and too perfect. She didn't blink. Her eyes were ringed with blistered flesh. Not fresh, just burned a long time ago. Healed wrong. "Hi, mister," she chirped, voice sing-song, then kept riding. Across the street, two men stood in the driveway, tending to a barbecue grill made of bone. The fire inside was white hot. I couldn't see what was cooking, but the meat sizzled in an unnatural pitch, like it was still trying to scream. The men laughed, flipping slabs of flesh that twitched on their skewers. One of them turned to me and waved. "New neighbor, Hearthfather's inside. You're just in time for supper." He smiled too wide, like his lips had been sliced at the corners just to make room for more obedience. I backed away. My legs felt unsteady, not from exhaustion, but from the wrongness of it all. The whole place was too serene, too staged. Every house had a red-painted door. Every mailbox bore a name carved in ash. And yet not a single soul seemed to belong to themselves. I turned down the sidewalk, feet sinking slightly into the softened concrete. Mailboxes grinned with jagged mouths. Trees leaned unnaturally inward as if eavesdropping. A dog barked. I turned my head toward the noise and froze. It wasn't a dog, not really. It had fur, sure, but too little of it. Its body was raw in places, patches of muscle exposed like peeling wallpaper. Its mouth unhinged in 4 directions, splitting down the center into tendrils that writhed when it howled. Its leash was made of vertebra. A child held it, one hand clutching the leash, the other cradling a melted doll. "Come on, Barkley," the boy said in a flat tone. "And let's not keep Daddy waiting." They walked by. The child's skin shimmered slightly as if stretched over something else. The dog's head tilted toward me. I kept walking. Block after block. Every turn was another lie made into flesh. A man mowing his lawn. A woman folding laundry on a porch. Every shirt and pair of pants soaked in fresh blood, still warm. Another child playing hopscotch with teeth. Each of them paused when I passed. Each one smiled. I felt like a trespasser. Like I had walked into a stage play that had been running for centuries and everyone knew I wasn't in the script. They weren't attacking me, not yet. But they were watching, judging, waiting for me to break character. I don't know how long I walked. The sun never shifted, the air never cooled. My sweat evaporated faster than I could produce it, and my throat felt like it was coated in sandpaper and regret. A hunger gnawed at me. Mephisto gave me a surge of demonic power before I left, but it felt almost gone. My body felt slow, my muscles weak. Healing was slower now, like my cells were tired of keeping me together. I collapsed near a corner lot where children played on a swing set made of tendon and nail. They didn't stop swinging. They just turned to look at me as I curled up under a gnarled tree, its roots whispering secrets in tongues I didn't want to understand. I don't even remember blacking out. I only remember the scream that woke me. Not a human scream, but a soul scream, high, thin, and endless. I sat up and followed the sound. The house at the end of the street was bigger than the others. 2 stories, brick facade, a porch with 3 rocking chairs and moved in rhythm, though no one sat in them. Smoke trickled from the chimney, thick and wet, smelling of pine and rotting skin. The yard was immaculate, except for the shape kneeling in the grass. It was a woman, barefoot, wearing a gingham dress, her skin scorched to leather. She knelt by the flower bed, whispering prayers into the soil. They weren't flowers. They were fingers, small ones, growing in bundles and twitching in the breeze. She looked up at me. Her face was burned away, nothing left but teeth and eyeballs.
"Dinner's ready," she rasped.
And then she went back to watering the flower bed with blood from a cracked jar. The front door creaked open and a man stepped out. Massive. Broad-shouldered, tall, hands big enough to crush a skull with a pat on the head. He wore a tucked-in flannel shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal arms caked with soot. His slacks were creased, his feet bare, toes black with ash. His face was kind. Too kind. Like a father from a 1950s TV show. Hair perfectly combed, smile fixed in place. He looked me up and down.
"Well now, you look like hell,"
he said in a warm, deep baritone. He chuckled at his own joke, then stepped forward and extended his hand.
"I'm the hearth father. You can call me Dad if you like."
I didn't move. His smile didn't falter, but his hand dropped slowly.
"No pressure. You must be tired, hungry. Come on in, supper's almost ready."
Behind him, inside the house, I saw shadows move. Not people, not demons, but souls. Walking, acting, and smiling. And every one of them wore a brand on their forearm. A glowing red house symbol, like a twisted realtor's logo, scabbed and raw. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat and stepped inside. The door closed behind me with a sound like an exhale. Final, wet, and warm. The air inside the hearth father's house was different from the streets. It wasn't scorched or sulfurous. It smelled pleasant. Wood polish, clove, and candle wax. The lingering sweetness of something roasted. Maybe pork, and maybe not. It was the kind of scent that brought memories with it. Involuntary and unkind. My daughter's birthday cake burnt on the bottom. My wife's hands slicked with Thanksgiving gravy. Quiet Sundays. It was almost enough to make me lower my guard. The interior of the house was pristine. Aggressively so. Every picture frame on the wall was aligned with surgical precision. The wallpaper floral with a soft beige. The floorboards buffed to a high shine despite the streaks of ash embedded in the grain. In the living room, a fireplace roared too high and too hot, licking the air with flames the color of molten gold, yet no smoke rose, and the fire did not consume the logs. It only danced, a performance for no one. Above the mantel hung a large family portrait. They were all smiling. Him, a wife, blonde, impossibly beautiful in that airbrushed mid-century housewife way, and 3 children. But as I stared, their faces seemed to move. The smiles didn't change, but the skin rippled. An eye blinked sideways. One of the children's teeth cracked and blackened like charcoal.
"Ah,"
came the hearth father's voice, rich and reverent behind me.
"That was our first Christmas here. It wasn't much back then. Just one house and a dream. But we made it work, didn't we, sweetheart?"
He addressed the photo, or maybe the wall. I turned. He was standing in the kitchen now, his frame casting a long shadow over the checkered tile. He held a dish towel in one hand and a steaming casserole in the other. His apron read, "Kiss the cook." The fabric was stiff with old blood.
"You ever make dinner for someone who didn't deserve it?"
he asked, not looking at me.
"I have. Years of it. Meals they never said thank you for. Plates wiped clean with a grunt and a sigh. But not here.
No siree. You hear? They always appreciate it. Don't you, honey? He looked over his shoulder. The wife was sitting at the kitchen table, her back straight, her eyes hollow. Her hair was singed down to the roots on one side, but someone had tried to comb the rest of it into a neat bun. Her mouth trembled, lips stitched into a smile but what looked like copper wire. Her hands folded delicately in her lap, her knuckles ash-gray and cracked. She didn't move. He set the casserole down in front of her, patting her shoulder with affection that made my stomach twist. She's shy today. Takes after her mother, he said with a shrug. I didn't speak. Instead, I scanned the room. 3 doors, 1 back hallway, 1 basement, 1 pantry. The hallway had light coming from it. I can feel your tension, he said suddenly, not looking at me. You've been through a lot, haven't you? So many of my children arrive in the same way. Burned by life, broken by loss, or temptation or cruelty. But here, oh, here there's peace, structure, cleanliness, and love. He gestured to a chair at the table. One of the children from the photo, now grown and gaunt, sat opposite the stitched wife, carving silently at a piece of meat that bled and sizzled despite the absence of a plate or fire. The knife moved in precise, rhythmic motions. The blood never spilled from the table's edge. It simply vanished. I didn't come for peace. No, you came to kill me. I tensed. He turned then, slowly, folding the towel and placing it on the counter like a man finishing a sermon. His hands were massive. His sleeves rolled up just enough to show the burned sigils branded into his forearms. Each one unique. Each one seemingly representing a soul he had claimed. You think I don't know the smell of your kind? You stink of sulfur, blood, and debt. You carry death in your spine, boy. You walk like a man with a chain around his throat. I know because I was one, and you aren't the first Mephisto has sent to get me. I stayed still as he stepped closer. He didn't strike, didn't threaten. He simply placed a hand on my shoulder, heavy, warm, absurdly fatherly, and looked me in the eye. I want to show you something. I want to show you what I was. I expected pain. What I got was memory. He led me down the hallway, past the living room with its perfect couch and perfectly posed children, into a den filled with relics of a former life. A baseball mat mounted above a fireplace, trophies, a high school diploma framed in oak, newspaper clippings under glass. Local man saves family from fire. Church leader praises heroic father. You were a firefighter? He nodded. I was a savior, a husband, a pillar, until the world started breaking. He gestured toward a photo of a young girl, his daughter, presumably. Her eyes had been gouged out from the image. Someone had tried to redraw them with charcoal. She came home crying one day, and told me the world was full of liars, that a teacher touched her, that her mother didn't believe her, that the kids laughed at her when she bled. His voice wavered, but not with sadness. With something quieter. Resignation? So I took him home, and I lit the fire. I stared at him. He met my gaze. I burned the rod out. I freed them. I gave them peace. No, you murdered them. He smiled gently and patiently.
That's what you see. But you haven't tasted salvation yet. You're still chasing false gods. That devil who whispers in your ear. The deals you make. The souls you steal. You're lost, boy.
He walked to a cabinet, opened it, and pulled out a branding iron. The tip glowed red, though I saw no fire.
I can help you. I can give you what you've never had.
What's that?
Family.
He moved fast, faster than anything his size should allow. I crashed into the wall, the wind knocked out of me. The lights flickered overhead and the walls pulsed, the wallpaper writhing with the impressions of screaming mouths. He didn't swing the brand at me. He held it like a father offers a baseball glove.
Just kneel and let me make you mine. You'll never be alone again. No more battles, no more blood. Just warmth, meals, firelight, and home.
I looked him in the eye and said, I already have a family. Then I spat on his shoe. He sighed.
Oh, I really hoped you'd be better than the last one.
He clapped his hands. His children stood from their chairs, their eyes bled, their fingers stretched, their faces twisted. And then the hearth father whispered,
Put our guest in the basement. He needs time to reflect.
The children didn't speak as they carried me. They didn't groan or mutter or chant. They hummed. A lullaby, tuneless, broken, sung in that off-key way that only the very young or the very mad manage to sustain. One held my arms while the others gripped my ankles and shoulders. I kicked and twisted, but their strength didn't match their size. It was unnatural. Hollow-boned boys with bruised eyes, faces locked in rictus grins, yet hands like iron. My fingers found flesh, but there was no warmth. Just the brittle feel of someone that used to be alive. They dragged me down the hall, past the glowing hearth, and past a doorway where I swear I saw the stitched wife still sitting, still smiling, eyes wide and dry. She didn't flinch, didn't blink, as if she had watched this same procession 1,000 times. The door they opened wasn't a basement door, but a trapdoor, hidden beneath a pristine rug woven in cheery reds and golds, the kind you'd see in a Norman Rockwell painting. They threw me down it without ceremony. I landed hard on something that cracked and squelched beneath me. Bone and meat. My own breath turned against me as the trapdoor slammed above, sealing me in with the heat and the stink. No lights, just darkness, sweltering and alive, wrapping around me like a fever dream. This wasn't a basement. This was a furnace of some kind. The walls were charred black and cracked in places, pulsing with deep veins of molten light that ran like magma beneath stretched skin. Chains hung from the ceiling like strands of wet hair, some coiled like nooses, others straight and taut, twitching as if they still remembered the weight they once held. The floor beneath me was uneven. Patches of smooth ash, patches of rusty, sticky resin, and the unmistakable outline of scorched human forms. Men, women, children even, burned into the stone. Their features melted mid-scream, fingers curled like claws. Bodies half absorbed into the floor, as if hell had been trying to eat them alive, and only half succeeded. At the center of the room stood a cage. Inside it, a man knelt. He was muttering, rocking on his knees, skin blackened like cinders but still clinging to life with a desperation that felt infectious. His eyes, if he had any, were buried in sockets rimmed red with ash. The words leaking from his mouth were wet and frantic, Youngest, you're youngest. I'm the youngest. I didn't mean to fail. I stepped closer, unsure if he was even real. That's when the voice returned, crisp, calm, and righteous. The Hearth Father. You trespass. You defy, and still you seek to steal. In this house, all must be proven. All must be purified. The cage creaked. The man inside stiffened as if someone had poured boiling oil down his spine. This soul was disobedient, the Hearth Father whispered. But with trial comes redemption. Without warning, the floor beneath the cage opened like a yawning mouth and flame erupted upward. It wasn't just fire, it was something else. Something living. The man's scream didn't come from his throat. It came from somewhere deeper, a rupture in reality, a crack in whatever remained of his soul. And from that fire, something emerged, twisted, towering, still smoldering from the transformation. Where the man had once crouched, now stood a creature wreathed in iron and flame. Chains wrapped its limbs like muscle tissue, fused to raw bone, glowing red with fresh fire. Its torso had cracked open like a rib cage turned furnace. The bones splayed outward, revealing a burning core within. The head was mostly gone, just a charred stump with a single eye, burning white and mad, flaring like a dying star. The Hearth Father called out, "The trial bound." I grabbed the nearest thing from the floor, a bent fireplace poker, and a chunk of metal I could maybe use as a shield. My whole body ached from the previous beatings. My shoulders screamed, my arm was weak, the shield was cracked before I even raised it. Then it moved. Chains uncoiled and snatched forward like vipers. One grazed my leg, just grazed, and the heat alone was enough to blister through my jeans and sear my skin raw. I screamed and dove behind a scorched pillar, the iron of it sticking to my palm like a hot stovetop. The trial bound didn't roar, it wept. Not tears, but voices, echoes. "I did everything right!" It shrieked in dozens of overlapping tones. "I prayed, I obeyed, he was supposed to love me!" It slammed its chains into the ground, sending a shockwave of heat that cracked the floor. I was tossed back like a rag doll, hitting the wall so hard my vision dimmed at the edges. I crawled, found the fireplace poker, staggered upright just in time to see it charging. I ducked, swung wide and low, caught the creature's leg. It staggered but didn't fall, turned, grabbed me by the throat with one chain-wrapped hand. The heat was unbearable. My neck blistered instantly, my vision blurred, and it lifted me like I weighed nothing. "Say you're sorry," it wailed. I shoved the red-hot poker deep into the glowing wound in its chest. The creature convulsed violently, fire belching from its back as it screamed louder than before. It dropped me and stumbled backward toward the pit. I had one chance. I grit my teeth, ignored the pain, and kicked the poker in deeper. The trial bound howled as its own chains snapped and curled like snakes, wrapping around its legs, its arms, dragging it down into the flame it was born from. The pit swallowed it whole. And then silence. No wind, no fire, just the hiss of flesh cooling on stone. I collapsed, heaving, barely conscious. My fingers twitched, but I couldn't feel them. My shirt had fused to my chest in places from the heat. My eyes stung from smoke, and my lips were cracked and bleeding. I dragged myself toward the wall like a dying animal, my mind a blur of ash and agony. I stayed in that basement from hell for what felt like months. I was fed and watered once a day by dumbwaiter. The chain and pulley clicked and clacked with the sound of bones snapping. But in time I came to love that sound. It was the only thing that brought meaning to my existence now. Months I was down there just waiting for something, anything. Every 5 or 6 meals, the voice of the hearth father would call out and ask me if I was ready to join the family, ready to be molded into whatever he needed to fuel his sick fantasies. Eventually I gave in. After all this time of living and stewing in my own filth, I gave in. He called out. He asked. And I accepted. Seconds later, a sound. A click. From the corner of the room, a panel in the wall slid open. The dumbwaiter. A new one this time. Large enough for a man. Inside, darkness. But cooler air flowed from within. It was a choice. Crawl and live, or stay and die. I moved, inch by inch, ribs screaming, skin flaking off like paper. I crawled into the dark. The lift shuddered and rose. Darkness surrounded me and silence settled. And then a whisper. A woman's voice, thin and trembling, floated into the dumbwaiter like a prayer drifting from a grave. Please forgive him. Please forgive me. Please forgive us. She was still praying. Even in this house, even after death, even after all of it. And then silence. As the dumbwaiter rose toward the hearth, up above once more. The dumbwaiter creaked to a halt with a soft click, and I found myself staring into the back of a warm, spotless kitchen. The air was thick with the scent of roasted meat and cinnamon, comforting in the worst possible way. My muscles screamed as I crawled out onto the tile too clean to belong anywhere in hell. The light above buzzed softly, casting an amber glow over the counters, the hanging pots, the softly humming refrigerator. It was like I had stepped back into someone's memory of home, filtered through the mind of someone that didn't quite remember how humans lived. He was already waiting. The hearth father stood at the kitchen island with his arms folded neatly, sleeves rolled up, apron tied with surgical precision. His face bore that same gentle smile, fatherly, proud, unwavering. His voice was calm when he spoke. Well now, look at you. Stronger already. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My skin still stung from burns and my legs trembled beneath me. But I stood. Somehow I stood. He studied me with that patient tilt of the head, the way you'd assess a misbehaving dog finally learning to heel. Then he asked, Are you ready to join the family, son? The word twisted in my gut. I nodded. His smile widened, and with a sweep of his arm, he gestured toward the dining room. The table was already set, perfectly. Plates of glazed mystery meat, roasted roots, and thick loaves of bread steamed gently beside bone-white china. Candles flickered in tall holders shaped like tree branches, the wax bleeding like sap. The wife sat at the far end of the table, smiling without blinking, hands folded in her lap. On either side of her sat the 2 children, heads slightly tilted in unnatural symmetry, mouths frozen open in what might have once been joy or awe. From what I learned in my time in the basement, these aren't actually children, mind you. Just twisted souls of adults that the hearth father molded them into, to fuel his sick fantasy. The hearth father pulled out a chair for me. After all, a family must always eat together. I sat. The meal passed in silence. Not a word spoken. Only the soft scrape of utensils, the occasional hollow thunk of a glass being raised and set back down. The food was edible. More than edible, in fact, but I couldn't tell you what it was. The family never looked at me, only at the Hearth Father, and he, in turn, looked only at me, as though they were just props, background. Eventually the plates emptied. He stood, slow and ceremonious, then gestured for me to follow. I did. He led me not to the altar, not to the furnace, but to the sitting room. A fire that crackled low in the hearth, framed by portraits too damaged to make out. Faces burned out, scratched through, or melted down into smooth ovals. He lowered himself into a chair and patted the one opposite. I sat. His voice was soft now, distant, like a man halfway between a confession and a dream. It didn't used to be like this, you know. I had a real home, a real family, wife, 2 kids, like the picture. He gestured vaguely to the mantel, though no picture stood there. I tried to do things right. I tried to keep us safe. The world, it's poison out there. It gets into their heads, into their hearts. One day I realized I wasn't protecting them anymore. I was failing them. So I did what any good father would do. He looked at me. I cleansed them. The silence thickened. The fire was quick. I made sure of that. I sang to them while it burned. It was the only way I could be their souls would stay whole. He smiled at the memory. It wasn't forced. It wasn't put on for show. He truly believed it. That night I finally felt peace. That's when he came. I didn't need to ask who. Mephisto. He offered me eternity in flame, but I'd already found my purpose, and so I built this. My new house. My new family. He leaned forward now, his voice almost a whisper. Souls don't belong to demons, you know. They don't understand care. They think in numbers, in transactions, not in love. These people, they were broken, lost, and I gave them a home. He placed a hand over his chest. I don't just collect souls. I raise them. I mold them. There was something heartbreakingly human about the way he said it. That was the worst part. The warmth in his eyes, the pride in his tone. A man who would have died for his family, but had instead murdered them, now spent eternity trying to recreate them with hell's cast-offs. You did well in the basement. You were strong. You can be my firstborn, my heir. Mephisto chose you for a reason. I can see that. The one to keep them safe when I'm gone. I swallowed hard. What would that mean? He smiled again, bigger this time. It means sacrifice. It means faith. And it means the fire. Then he stood and offered his hand. Come, son. Let's prepare for the ceremony. And I took it. Because I wasn't done yet. Not until he broke. Not until Mephisto got what he sent me for. The Hearth Father led me through a narrow hallway hidden behind a swinging panel in the sitting room stone wall. It groaned shut behind us, sealing out the warmth of the hearth and plunging us into a claustrophobic passage that smelled of smoke, old copper, and scorched prayer books. The light came from a single lantern swinging overhead, and its flame cast elongated shadows on the stone walls that looked like people kneeling. Not carved, not painted. Just there. We stopped at a thick iron door carved with symbols I didn't recognize. No crosses, no scripture, just jagged sigils etched like claw marks, the shape of a house burning from the inside. The hearth father ran his hand across it lovingly, like a father stroking his child's face, and pushed it open. The branding room. It was a reliquary for madness. Hundreds of framed family portraits lined the walls, floor to ceiling, each nearly identical, the hearth father in the center smiling wide. A woman on one side, children on the other, but the faces changed. Always new souls added to the family, their names scrawled beneath the frames in soot and blood. The room pulsed with heat, but it wasn't the furnace kind. It was something deeper. An oppressive spiritual fever, like the walls were sweating judgment. At the center stood an altar of black stone, ash-caked and cracked. Upon it rested a branding iron, not shaped like a cross, not even a sigil. It was a house, stylized and simple but engulfed in flame, with little stick-figure people inside, screaming in silhouette. I stared at it as the hearth father approached, reverent as a priest preparing a rite. I've been saving this one. It's a father's mark, the sign of a protector. Once you bear it, your soul will never wander. It'll always know where home is. He placed it in the brazier. The iron hissed. And once it's seared into your flesh, you'll understand what it truly means to belong. I hesitated, not out of fear, but because this had to be perfect. So I turned to him slowly and asked, "Will it hurt?" He looked surprised, then chuckled like a father amused by a child's innocence. Oh, yeah. But that pain? That's the lie leaving your body. That's the soul purging its weakness. That's how you know it's working. I walked to the altar and knelt. I could feel the heat behind me. The iron was nearly ready. And then I said, quiet and trembling, "I'm afraid I won't be strong enough." Silence. Then footsteps. The hearth father approached, stood beside me and said, "You will be, son, because I'll be here. We'll all be here." I lowered my head and let my voice shake. I need to know you really love me." Another silence. Another step closer. "I do. More than you know. You've survived so much. You've proved yourself." Then I said slowly, "Will you say the words? Like you did with the others? The words before the brand?" His breath caught. It was almost imperceptible, but it was there. I had touched something. "You heard that?" he asked. "In the furnace, the voices told me you sang." The hearth father knelt beside me, huge and shadowed, and for the first time I saw a crack in his voice. "I only sing to those who love, the ones ready to come home." I looked up straight into his eyes. "Then sing to me." That was the hook. He stood tall. He lifted the branding iron from the flame, its tip white hot, humming with spiritual heat, and then he sang. Soft and low, a lullaby I didn't recognize. Something old and broken, half hymn and half cry. As he raised the brand, I spoke again, loud enough to make him pause. "You aren't my father." And then I struck. I twisted at the last second and drove my elbow into his sternum, catching him off guard. The brand slipped from his hand, and I snatched it midair. The metal hissed against my palm, searing my skin, but I didn't stop. I plunged the brand into his chest. He screamed. No, he wailed, as the iron carved through his flesh and bone, sinking it like it belonged there. The house symbol glowed against his ribcage, and suddenly, the fire turned against him. Blue flames erupted from the wound, not red, not hellish, but cold and holy, like divinity corrupted and turned inside out. The soul he'd buried, no, the hundreds of them, burst from his mouth, his eyes, his chest, screaming in a choir of agony. He collapsed to his knees, clutching the brand as if to force it deeper, his eyes wild with grief. I just wanted a family. I wanted to come home. His voice fell apart in sobs. The fire consumed him, and then he was gone. Just a pile of ash. And in the center of it, the blue flame. It flickered gently, no longer screaming, just pulsing, waiting. And then came the scent of sulfur, the faint clap of a slow, sarcastic applause. "Well played," Mephisto said, stepping into the room in a cardigan and slippers. "That was touching, really. A Hallmark should have been here." I stood still, smoking from my burns. He was strong. Yes, he was. That's what made him dangerous. He didn't steal these souls. He convinced them they wanted to stay, and then branded them to him. He plucked the blue flame from the ash and rolled it across his fingers like a coin. It whimpered. He smiled. "Still, rules are rules. You burn it, I bag it." The flame vanished into his palm, and then the house began to shake. Cracks split the walls. The portraits curled inward and crumbled. The warmth turned to fire. The ceiling split open to reveal the burning sky of hell. Souls screamed from every wall, pouring out like floodwater. The neighborhood was dying. The illusion was over. Mephisto looked at me and smiled. 24 hours? Enjoy 'em. And then he was gone. The world fell away, and I was back in the motel, sent there through a rip in a hell that had me feeling like I was falling through the depths of Tartarus itself. And then, back on my bed, the scent hit me. Bleach, cigarettes, dust baked into polyester curtains. Then the hum of the AC unit coughing behind a wall. A flickering ceiling light. The scratch of rough motel sheets itching against my skin. I blinked, and the color palette of hell, those molten reds and corpse-flush grays peeled away, replaced by faded beige walls and a green carpet stained with the shape of forgotten tragedies. I was back. The motel room was the same as before. Same laptop still open on the desk. Same sticky note with that curling little M on the corner, like a devil's tail drawn in Sharpie. Same buzzing silence that felt too loud for a world that was supposed to be sane. I sat up slowly. My shirt clung to me with sweat. My hands were unburned, my arm a hole again. The brand mark I'd seared into the hearth father gone but not forgotten. I could still smell it, still feel it. I wiped my eyes, only to realize I hadn't cried. Not yet. I wasn't sure I could anymore. And then a voice, smooth, sarcastic, and low as a purr. "You know, I was almost impressed this time." I turned. Mephisto stood near the sink, swirling something in a chipped glass. He wore a tacky Hawaiian shirt and dark slacks. No shoes. Just a pair of fuzzy devil-faced slippers that looked like they belonged in a clearance bin in Hell's gift shop. Almost being the operative word. Still, solid improvisation. The brand move? Very Old Testament. I said nothing and just stared. Mephisto raised an eyebrow. Don't look at me like I kicked your dog. You're the one who burned Daddy. I stood, rubbing the soreness from my shoulder. He wanted to keep them, all of them, forever. Possessive types, man. Gets old fast. He took another sip, then set the glass down. Still, I gotta admit, he said, walking slowly towards me. This one was personal. That fool tried to cut me out of the deal. Claimed squatters' rights on souls like he was building his own little kingdom down there. Not very neighborly. I looked at him. So that's all this is? Ownership? Mephisto smiled. An easy, lazy grin that didn't reach his eyes. Ownership is just Hell's way of keeping things tidy. Everyone has to pay the landlord. Some folks just forget whose name is on the deed. But not you. Not yet. You're still renting. I didn't flinch. Not this time. Maybe I was just getting used to his antics and the smell of sulfur. Mephisto took a step back and clapped his hands once. Well, you've earned your intermission, champ. 24 hours of good old-fashioned earthly freedom. Shower, shave, breathe some smog. I hear there's a diner up the road with coffee so bad it might actually cure you. He winked and turned to go, but then paused at the door, his hand hovering over the doorknob. And one more thing, he said, glancing over his shoulder. His voice dropped, just enough to let something cold leak through. You might want to enjoy this next break. The next soul? Let's just say, it's not the kind you walk away from clean. Click. The door opened, he stepped through, and was gone. No puff of smoke, no theatrics, just empty air and the smell of brimstone where he'd stood. I was alone again. Alone in a motel room where time waited and hell didn't. The clock on the microwave blinked. 11 a.m.